We're coming to you from New York City today. And it's kind of for me, it's a warm night. I don't know. I spent my day in a deposition, which is not the nicest way to spend your day. So we're going to have a good time tonight. I'm very overjoyed that Lori Light head, foot, feet was defeated. But I am very disappointed that the people of Chicago voted for 8 other Democrat alternatives. It outlines a problem that faces us in many, many American cities that are in deep trouble. And that problem is they vote Democrat no matter what. It's like a reflex action that can't be stopped. Think about it. 50 years of Democrat control. 50 years of Democrat control in Chicago. Murder is close to an all-time high in Chicago. It went up about 50 or 60% under her. Overall crime went up another 50 or 60%. People are leaving left and right, and they continue to vote Democrat after 50 years. What do you need to do to convince people that they're voting for a set of policies that are destroying them? So it's extremely discouraging. I know all of my friends are so excited that Lori Lightfoot has been defeated, and they were so excited that de Blasio was defeated. So the best we're going to do in Chicago is Vallis, who is a Democrat, was a head of schools under the former Mayor Richard Daley, and began as a good one with very good intentions and ended broken a bit by the teachers union. Although they're not supporting him, they're supporting the other candidate, who seems to have the best chance of winning, by the way, who is considered to be, someone described her as Lori Lightfoot 3.0. In other words, worse than Lori Lightfoot. So if that's possible, we'll see. So before you do all the celebrating, somebody explain to me how we get beyond this destructive Pavlovian Democrat vote. I don't know how much more you have to do to tell people that your party is not capable of governing than to have record levels of murder and people defecting from your city. So we'll keep on it, and we'll keep looking for ways in which we can change that, because we may very well be able to change things on a national level with a victory in 24 and taking over both houses of Congress. But the inner cities, if you want to call it that, or the older cities, are completely in Democrat hands. Also, remember that Joe Biden is guiding us through the difficulties of Ukraine and Russia. Boy, do we feel confident. We've got a war going on, and it has no natural, easy ending. If you might remember, and I'd ask you to go to my podcast, rudygiulianics.com, and I do an analysis of something some of you might know, some of you might not, and that's the Powell Doctrine. Colin Powell was the Secretary of State. He was the Secretary of State under George Bush 43, and he also served as National Security Advisor for Ronald Reagan. And he developed a doctrine, which also you'd have to attribute to some extent to Ronald Reagan and Caspar Weinberger, which was a reaction to the Vietnam, Korea wars, where we ended up in non-victories and humiliating endings. And he set out, depends on which version you use, 5 to 7 principles that you should apply before you go to war. So let me summarize it simply. First of all, you have to be able to say that in going to war, you're serving a very important national security objective. Number 2, you have to have a clear goal that you want to achieve. A goal that is achievable. Why are you doing it, and when does it end? As opposed to you go into a war and you just let it creep and creep and creep and creep. And finally, what is the foreseeable outcome that will end the war? So do you think the Biden administration is capable of conducting an analysis like I just did? Of course it isn't. This is why Secretary Gates told us that he never made the right decision on foreign policy. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. And so let's look at Ukraine from that point of view. Do we want to support Ukraine or not? And the answer is, it is in our national security interest to support Ukraine. It's in our national security interest that Russia be driven out of Ukraine, that Russia not get a foothold in Europe, not get that close to our NATO allies. The chances of a war breaking out, if Russia had a 1,000-mile border with NATO, is much greater than it is right now, where that border is very, very small, just few small countries. And in that sense, Ukraine acts as a buffer. It always has, by the way. So I think you can easily check off it's in our national interest for Ukraine to prevail. But what's the goal? When do you win this war? What constitutes winning this war? Well, that's a big issue between the two of them, right? From the point of view of Moscow, victory for Moscow has been scaled down because of the Ukrainian efforts to defeat them and hold them back. And it's been scaled down to 2 things: keeping Crimea and keeping the land bridge between Russia and Crimea. Exactly how long and how big that, does it begin at Kharkiv? Does it go further south than that? That's probably somewhat negotiable. It is unacceptable and not in the cards that Russia will leave completely. So that's one side. Now we go look at Ukraine. What would Ukraine accept? Ukraine would accept Russia out, give up the land bridge, gone. Give us back Crimea. It's Ukrainian. We can't tolerate our sovereign territory taken. There does not seem to be too much give in either position. So here's where the United States has to make a decision. That's what they want. What do we want? What's our goal? And we have a president that's incapable of doing that. This is like Lyndon Johnson taking over Vietnam from Kennedy with 30,000 troops in there and leaving it to Richard Nixon with 500,000. And he never had a goal. He just kept putting more troops in. Or it's like the nation building creep in Iraq or in Afghanistan. What was our goal there? And if we were going to build a nation, why don't we put the resources in to do it? So we have to make a decision. The decision is, Who we tell they can't get what they want? I think we tell both of them. I think we tell our ally, Ukraine, be realistic. To expel Russia from Ukraine is going to cost you another 100,000 lives. Those are living human beings that aren't going to be around. It's going to decimate your economy that's already decimated. It's going to put you behind in rebuilding a decade or more. And it's going to be a lost decade for a lot of young Ukrainians. Crimea, this would be tough now for Ukrainians to accept, but this is true. Crimea really is Russian. It was Khrushchev's birthplace. Khrushchev had a soft spot for it and gave it its own kind of independence. But it was so important to Russia, they put their nuclear fleet there in Crimea. Because Russia always considered Ukraine part of Russia, which is, of course, part of the problem. Ukraine does not consider itself part of Russia. On the part of the Ukrainians, they should be told, no land bridge. Sorry. You got to give up the land bridge. You got to give up the land because, first of all, you got to pay, in some sense, for the terrible atrocities that you carried out over the last year. Because Russia will say, well, you want us to give back what we already had. And our answer would be, yeah, you're going to have to do that. And I think we should say that if not, we're going to give Ukraine, and European nations are, the resources to kick the hell out of Russia. And Ukraine is going to have to live with Crimea. Russia's going to have to live with Crimea. That's it. No land bridge. Get the hell out of Donetsk. Get the hell out of... You're never going to get Kharkiv because I helped build the emergency management center there. Russians. And by the way, people in Kharkiv used to be Russian, and they now hate you, Putin. They used to be on your side, and you went and killed them. But maybe that's not what I just outlined. Maybe isn't the right solution, but it's better than no solution. You can't fight a war without an objective. When are we going to learn that? What a terrible time to have elected a nitwit president. Wow. Well, 2 more train crashes. One in the United States, and one I think in Europe, in Greece, right? Terrible.
And the transportation minister immediately resigned.
Pardon me?
In Greece, the transportation minister, their version of the Department of Transportation secretary, resigned right after the train crash.
Maybe we should go and explain to Secretary Baba that what the Romans used to do in situations like this, and we could get the scene from Godfather 2, where Hagen goes to meet Johnny Five Angels, and tells him, you know, when you have a terrible failure and you're a traitor, or you lose a tremendous battle, or you screw up the way Buttigieg did, and you don't want your family to be disinherited and hurt and whatever, you do the honorable thing, and your family is taken care of for life. You get a nice bottle of wine, have a nice meal, sharpen your knife, get a nice warm bath, and then, Johnny, you know what you do. And your family will be taken care of forever. Remember, I didn't suggest anything, just talking about the Romans.
Of course, and that crash in Greece, of course, 36 people dead. Many on the train were students returning after a long Greek holiday weekend. And the survivors say the impact was so strong that it threw several passengers' bodies as far as 40 meters from the track. So a very unfortunate
I just, you
situation.
wonder about these things. I guess it's just this is really coincidence that it would happen, but all of a sudden now we're having these. And the other one was a propane leak of 30,000 gallons, which, well, who do we have on our right here or your left?
Of course, we have with us today a very special guest, Mike Ragusa.
Yeah.
Here's Mike.
Yep, that's
From
right.
Bay Ridge, candidate for New York City Council,
District 47.
District 47.
This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about.
Endorsed by this lovely man
This
right
is
here.
what I'm talking about.
That's it. Yeah.
So, Mike, tell us a little bit
So
about
who-
yourself.
Yeah, first tell us about yourself, then tell us about the race.
All right.
And this is where we got to turn it. I mean,
Starts locally.
it's it's like the broken windows theory. You got to change the
Right.
here and you got to change it here.
Right.
But if you only change it here, you don't change here at all. It falls.
It's true. I mean, you know best. You
it
fixed
does,
the
it
city.
does.
This city was
But I'm so
in
glad.
shambles.
I'm so glad you're running because it's hard to get people to run for good reason.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate
So
that.
tell us.
So basically, I've been working for the city since 2015. I started in FDNY EMS. I was all over Manhattan. I've responded to many incidents. And then I transferred over to New York Health and Hospitals. I do investigations on Rikers Island for correctional health services.
That's pleasant.
Oh, it's a great place. I highly recommend to stay there.
I used to go I used to make an annual New Year's Day trip to Rikers Island.
Yeah. So basically, anytime an inmate commits a violent crime against a healthcare worker, we investigate them, and then we team up with Corrections Intelligence Bureau, and we rearrest them and add more time to wherever they're going, which is more often than not.
How do you get away with that in Soviet New York?
Well, Mayor, it starts at Rikers as you know, it's a very, when Bernie Carrick was there, things were in line. We know that,
Bernie did an
excellent job.
A miracle there.
Yeah. So they got rid of the use of forces and things like this because some unfortunate incidents happened at Rikers Island. So the COs just cannot, like NYPD, they cannot do their job. And inmates know this, so they just do whatever they want.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing how it changed.
Yeah. And we protect our healthcare workers, and we try to get these dangerous inmates. We can't even do punitive segregation anymore, unfortunately, because the liberal city council got rid of it after seeing videos of corrections officers getting beaten, stabbed, their heads stepped on, literally heads cracked open by inmates. So the liberal city council decided to get rid of punitive segregation, which is also known as solitary confinement. So there's no punishment for inmates in Rikers Island at this time. Mm-hmm.
Boy, oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
I ran or oversaw the Federal Bureau of Prisons on two Ford administration and in the Trump administration. And without, I mean, a prison doesn't have to be punitive.
No.
But without those measures, it'll eventually become more punitive.
Right. So when an inmate used to get an infraction in Rikers Island, and for those who don't know, an infraction confinement. So now, as I said, these inmates know there's no consequences for their actions, so they're not going to get any big time. The corrections officers can't, be forceful with them. So it's like it's a pretty crazy area right now.
So now you're running in Bay Ridge.
Yes.